The Pacific Ocean is so vast that it reshapes the very idea of what an ocean can be. It spans from the icy margins of the Arctic to the restless waters around Antarctica, and from the shores of Asia and Australia to the coasts of the Americas. Within this immensity lie thousands upon thousands of islands, scattered like constellations across a blue expanse. Some are volcanic summits rising dramatically from the abyssal plains, others are delicate coral atolls barely cresting above sea level, and still others are fragments of ancient continents carried and reshaped by tectonic forces. Together they form cultural, ecological, and geological worlds of astonishing diversity. To speak of all the islands in the Pacific is to trace a story of fire and coral, of migration and myth, of empire and independence, and of resilience in the face of environmental change. In the northern reaches of the ocean, the Pacific brushes the coasts of North America and Asia with chains of islands born from tectonic unrest. Off the coast of Alaska stretch the windswept Aleutians, formerly known as the Aleutian Islands. These islands arc westward like a broken bridge between continents, marking the boundary where the Pacific Plate dives beneath the North American Plate. Volcanic peaks, fog-laden cliffs, and seabird colonies define their rugged character. Farther south along the North American margin, islands dot the coast of British Columbia and the western United States, though many are continental fragments rather than purely oceanic creations. Across the ocean, north of Japan, lie the Kuril Islands, another volcanic chain formed by subduction. Their steaming vents and forested slopes tell the same geological story as the Aleutians, but in a different political and cultural context. These islands are administered by Russia, and they stand as both ecological sanctuaries and geopolitical flashpoints. South of them stretch the Ryukyu Arc, including the Ryukyu Islands, which curve toward Taiwan. Among them, Okinawa stands out for its distinct culture, coral reefs, and tragic wartime history. These islands are part of Japan, yet they preserve languages, traditions, and identities that differ from the Japanese mainland. Farther east, in the central North Pacific, rises one of the most famous archipelagos in the world, Hawaii. Formed by a hotspot deep beneath the Pacific Plate, these islands march in a line from the active volcanoes of the southeastern end to the eroded remnants stretching northwest. The main inhabited islands include Oahu, with its bustling capital and iconic beaches, Maui, known for its valleys and volcanic summit, Kauai, lush and deeply eroded, Molokai and Lanai, quieter and more rural, and Niihau, privately owned and sparsely populated. The southeasternmost island, often called the Big Island, hosts some of the planet's most active volcanoes. Beyond the main group lie the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, a chain of atolls and small islands that extend the archipelago's reach across the ocean. South of Hawaii, the Pacific opens into the realm often referred to as Oceania, a region traditionally divided into Melanesia, Micronesia, and Polynesia. Each of these cultural geographic zones contains numerous island nations and territories, each with its own landscape and story. Micronesia occupies much of the western and central Pacific north of the equator. The Federated States of Micronesia consists of hundreds of islands spread across 4 states, Yap, Chuuk, Pohnpei, and Kouri. These islands range from high volcanic masses draped in rainforest to low coral atolls encircling luminous lagoons. Nearby lies Palau, renowned for its marine biodiversity and the surreal beauty of its rock islands. To the northeast are the Marshall Islands, composed mostly of coral atolls barely rising above the sea, whose history includes nuclear testing and ongoing concerns about sea level rise. Even smaller in area is Nauru, a single raised coral island whose phosphate deposits once made it one of the wealthiest nations per capita before environmental degradation and economic decline reshaped its fortunes. Farther west is Guam, an unincorporated territory of the United States, strategically significant and culturally Chamorro at its core. Just to its north lie the Northern Mariana Islands, including Saipan and Tinian, whose histories intertwine indigenous heritage with colonial rule and global conflict. Moving southeast into Polynesia, the islands spread across an enormous triangular area bounded roughly by Hawaii to the north, New Zealand to the southwest, and Easter Island to the southeast. At the heart of this region is Samoa, a group of volcanic islands rich in tradition and communal life. Nearby is Tonga, a constitutional monarchy composed of many islands, some low and coral-fringed, others rising sharply from the sea. The Cook Islands lie farther east, self-governing in free association with New Zealand, their lagoons shimmering in turquoise hues. To the northeast are the Tuvalu, a nation of low-lying atolls acutely vulnerable to climate change. Farther north is Kiribati, which uniquely straddles the equator and the international date line, comprising widely scattered atolls and islands such as Tarawa and Kiritimati. These islands illustrate the delicate balance between coral growth and ocean forces, between subsistence lifestyles and global economic pressures. Eastward across a vast sweep of ocean lies French Polynesia, an overseas collectivity of France. Among its many island groups are the Society Islands, including Tahiti, whose mountainous interior and surrounding reef have captivated travelers for centuries, and Bora Bora, famous for its lagoon and overwater bungalows. Farther northeast are the Marquesas Islands, rugged and remote, with towering cliffs plunging into deep blue waters. To the south lie the Austral Islands, cooler and less visited, and to the west the Tuamotu Archipelago, a chain of low coral atolls stretching for hundreds of miles. At the southeastern corner of Polynesia stands Easter Island, also known as Rapa Nui, a remote volcanic island administered by Chile. Its massive stone statues, the moa, gaze inland from their platforms, silent witnesses to a complex history of settlement, ecological change, and resilience. To the southwest of Polynesia lies Melanesia, a region characterized by darker-skinned populations and often larger, more mountainous islands. Fiji consists of more than 300 islands, the largest being Viti Levu and Vanua Levu, where volcanic peaks rise above sugarcane fields and coral reefs. West of Fiji are the Solomon Islands, a chain of large, forested islands whose World War II history remains etched in sunken ships and airstrips reclaimed by jungle. Still farther west is Vanuatu, an archipelago of volcanic islands where active volcanoes glow against the night sky and cultural traditions remain strong in rural villages. South of Vanuatu lies New Caledonia, another French territory, whose main island Grande Terre harbors unique flora and one of the world's largest lagoons. Near the western edge of the Pacific sits the massive island of New Guinea, divided politically between Papua New Guinea and Indonesia. Papua New Guinea occupies the eastern half and includes numerous offshore islands such as New Britain and Bougainville. The western half forms part of Indonesia, whose thousands of islands stretch across both the Pacific and Indian Oceans. Although much of Indonesia is often associated with Southeast Asia, many of its eastern islands, such as those in the Maluku and Papua regions, are firmly within the Pacific cultural and geological sphere. Southward lies Australia, whose northeastern coast faces the Pacific and is fringed by the Great Barrier Reef, itself dotted with coral cays and continental islands. Off its eastern shores lies New Zealand, composed primarily of two large islands known as the North Island and the South Island, along with many smaller offshore islands. Though geologically distinct from the tropical Pacific Islands, New Zealand is deeply connected to Polynesian migration history and to the broader Pacific community. In the eastern Pacific, closer to the Americas, lie island groups that are biologically and geologically distinct. The Galápagos Islands, belonging to Ecuador, are volcanic islands famed for their unique wildlife and their role in shaping Charles Darwin's ideas about evolution. North of them, off the coast of Costa Rica, rises Cocos Island, a lush, rain-soaked outpost surrounded by shark-rich waters. Farther north and west is Clipperton Island, a remote coral atoll administered by France, uninhabited but ecologically significant. Along the Pacific coast of Mexico are islands such as Guadalupe and the Revillagigedo group, volcanic and biologically rich. Off the coast of Canada and the United States are numerous coastal islands, though these are typically continental rather than oceanic in origin. In the far North Pacific, seasonal sea ice and harsh weather limit human habitation on many islands, yet they remain vital for marine mammals and seabirds. Across this immense oceanic canvas, the islands of the Pacific share certain themes. Many were settled by extraordinary navigators who read stars, swells, and bird flight to cross vast distances in double-hulled canoes. The Lapita culture spread through Melanesia and into Polynesia, leaving pottery shards and linguistic traces. Over centuries, distinct languages and identities emerged on islands separated by hundreds or thousands of miles of open sea. Geologically, the islands tell the story of plate tectonics more vividly than perhaps anywhere else on Earth. Subduction zones give rise to volcanic arcs like the Aleutians and the Kuriles. Hotspots create linear chains like Hawaii. Coral polyps build atolls atop sinking volcanic foundations, forming rings of land around lagoons as described by Darwin. Continental fragments like New Zealand and New Caledonia preserve ancient rocks and unique species that evolved in isolation. Culturally, Pacific Islands have experienced waves of contact, colonization, and transformation. Spanish, Dutch, British, French, American, German, and Japanese empires all claimed territories across the ocean. Missionaries introduced Christianity, traders brought new goods and diseases, and colonial administrations redrew boundaries. In the 20th century, many islands became battlegrounds in global wars, their beaches and jungles scarred by conflict. In the post-war era, movements for independence and self-determination reshaped the political map, leading to the sovereign states and territories that exist today. Environmentally, the islands face profound challenges. Many low-lying atolls are only a few meters above sea level, making them vulnerable to rising oceans and storm surges. Coral reefs, which protect shorelines and sustain fisheries, are threatened by warming waters and acidification. At the same time, Pacific Island communities are leaders in climate advocacy, drawing on traditions of stewardship and communal resilience. Yet beyond geopolitics and environmental science, the islands of the Pacific remain places of daily life and cultural richness. In villages across Samoa and Tonga, extended families gather for ceremonies that reinforce social bonds. In Fiji and Vanuatu, markets brim with taro, yams, and fresh fish. In French Polynesia, dance and tattoo traditions carry ancestral meanings. In Micronesia, navigators are reviving traditional wayfinding techniques. In Hawaii, efforts to revitalize the Hawaiian language and protect sacred sites reflect a broader resurgence of indigenous identity. The Pacific Islands are not a uniform mosaic but a dynamic network of lands and seas, linked by currents, winds, and histories. Some are bustling hubs of tourism and commerce, others remain isolated and sparsely populated. Some rise high with cloud forests and waterfalls, others lie flat and sandy, encircling lagoons of astonishing clarity. Together they form one of the most diverse and remarkable regions on Earth. To attempt to describe all the islands in the Pacific is to confront both immensity and intimacy. Immensity, because the ocean covers a third of the planet's surface and contains tens of thousands of islands. Intimacy, because each island, no matter how small, holds its own ecosystems, stories, and communities. From volcanic arcs in the north to coral atolls in the tropics, from continental fragments in the southwest to isolated outposts in the east, the islands of the Pacific compose a living geography shaped by fire, water, wind, and human imagination. Continuing across the immense expanse of the Pacific Ocean, it becomes clear that even after surveying the better-known archipelagos and nations, vast constellations of islands remain to be described. The Pacific contains not only sovereign countries and major territories but also remote outposts, coral specks, volcanic pinnacles, and subantarctic fragments that stretch the definition of what an island can be. Part 2 of this exploration turns toward additional archipelagos, lesser-known territories, geological outliers, and the environmental and cultural threads that bind them into a shared oceanic world. In the central Pacific north of the equator, beyond the main Hawaiian Islands, lie the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, which extend in a long curve toward Asia. Though politically part of Hawaii, they are largely uninhabited and protected as part of the Papahanaumokuakea Marine National Monument. Atolls such as Midway and Kure represent the final emergent peaks of the same hotspot chain that created the younger islands to the southeast. These atolls are low, sandy, and ringed by reefs, supporting seabirds, monk seals, and fragile ecosystems shaped by isolation and ocean currents. Farther south, between Hawaii and the Marshall Islands, lies Kiribati, whose territory spans a vast area of ocean. Kiribati is composed of three main island groups, the Gilbert Islands, the Phoenix Islands, and the Line Islands. The Line Islands stretch far to the east, bringing Kiribati close to the Americas geographically while remaining culturally Pacific. Kiritimati, one of the largest coral atolls in the world by land area, lies here. The Phoenix Islands, largely uninhabited, are protected for their pristine marine ecosystems. The sheer spread of Kiribati's islands demonstrates how Pacific nations can be geographically enormous in ocean space while modest in land mass. East of the Marshall Islands and north of Tuvalu, one finds the scattered atolls of the central equatorial Pacific. Tuvalu consists of 9 low-lying islands and atolls, each encircling lagoons that define both the geography and the daily life of its inhabitants. In these places, land is narrow and elongated, sometimes only a few hundred meters wide, and the horizon is always ocean. Fresh water exists as thin lenses beneath the sand, making communities especially sensitive to drought and saltwater intrusion. South of the equator, the Pacific opens into broad Melanesian waters. Solomon Islands is not a single island but a chain of large, mountainous islands and hundreds of smaller ones. Guadalcanal, Malaita, and Choiseul are among the major islands, each with interior highlands and coastal plains. Dense Rhine forests cloak their slopes, while mangroves fringe sheltered bays. Offshore, smaller coral islands and reef systems add to the country's geographic complexity. The Solomon Islands illustrate the contrast between high volcanic islands, rich in rivers and biodiversity, and low coral formations that rely more heavily on marine resources. Westward lies Vanuatu, whose archipelago stretches in a north-south line. Many of its islands are volcanic, and some host active volcanoes that are central to both the landscape and local belief systems. Islands like Espiritu Santo and Tanna offer different expressions of the same geological processes that shape much of the Pacific Rim. The islands are steep, green, and often ringed with reefs that give way abruptly to deep ocean trenches. Further south is New Caledonia, which includes not only the large island of Grande Terre but also the Loyalty Islands and numerous smaller islets. Grande Terre itself is a fragment of an ancient continent, giving it a geological history distinct from purely volcanic islands. This ancient origin has allowed unique plant species to evolve in isolation, resulting in high levels of endemism. Surrounding the main island is one of the largest barrier reef systems in the world, forming lagoons of extraordinary clarity and ecological richness. To the east of Vanuatu and north of New Caledonia, the waters give way to Fiji, whose more than 300 islands range from large volcanic masses to small coral islets. The two largest islands, Viti Levu and Vanuatu Levu, contain most of the population and economic activity, but outer islands such as the Lau Group and the Yasawas provide additional cultural and geographic diversity. Fiji's position at the crossroads of Melanesia and Polynesia has shaped its linguistic and cultural landscape, blending influences from across the Pacific. Moving northeast again into Polynesia, one encounters the Kingdom of Tonga, composed of three primary island groups, Tongatapu in the south, Hapei in the center, and Vavau in the north. Some Tongan islands are low coral platforms, while others are volcanic and mountainous. The kingdom's long history as a unified Polynesian state distinguishes it from many other Pacific island groups that experienced prolonged colonial rule. Nearby lies Samoa, centered on the islands of Upolu and Savaii. These volcanic islands rise steeply from the sea, with waterfalls, lava fields, and dense tropical vegetation shaping the interior. Traditional village life remains central, and the social structure known as the Fa Samoa continues to guide community relations. To the east is American Samoa, a territory of the United States, sharing cultural ties but existing under a different political framework. Further east across a wide sweep of ocean lies French Polynesia, whose island groups vary dramatically. The Society Islands include high volcanic islands such as Tahiti and Moorea, surrounded by barrier reefs and lagoons. The Tuamotu archipelago consists almost entirely of low coral atolls, some barely rising above sea level. The Marquesas Islands are more rugged and isolated, lacking the protective barrier reefs that characterize many other Polynesian islands. The Austral Islands and the Gambier Islands add further variation, with cooler climates and distinct local traditions. At the far southeastern edge of Polynesia lies Easter Island, administered by Chile. This isolated volcanic island is small compared to many Pacific archipelagos, yet its cultural significance is immense. The moa statues carved by the Rapa Nui people stand as monuments to a complex society that flourished in isolation. The island's remoteness underscores the navigational achievements of Polynesian voyagers who settled it centuries ago. Turning toward the southwestern Pacific, the large islands of New Zealand anchor the region. The North Island and South Island are continental fragments rather than volcanic chains or coral atolls. Their landscapes include mountain ranges, geothermal areas, fjords, and temperate rainforests. Offshore islands such as Stewart Island and the Chatham Islands extend New Zealand's geographic reach. Though climatically distinct from tropical Pacific islands, New Zealand shares deep Polynesian roots through the Maori people. Northwest of New Zealand and east of Australia lies the Coral Sea, dotted with small reefs and cays, some administered by Australia. Norfolk Island, located between Australia and New Zealand, has its own distinct history tied to British colonisation and descendants of the Bounty mutineers. Lord Howe Island, also in the Tasman Sea, is known for its dramatic volcanic remnants and unique ecosystems. In the western Pacific, the massive island of New Guinea dominates. The eastern half forms the independent state of Papua New Guinea, which includes numerous offshore islands such as New Ireland, Manus, and the Trobriand Islands. The western half is part of Indonesia, specifically the provinces of Papua and West Papua. New Guinea's mountainous spine, dense rainforests, and extraordinary linguistic diversity make it one of the most complex island regions in the world. North of New Guinea lies Palau, whose rock islands form a labyrinth of mushroom-shaped limestone islets rising from turquoise waters. East of Palau are the islands of the Federated States of Micronesia, spread across Yap, Chuuk, Pohnpei, and Kori. Each state has its own geography and cultural heritage, ranging from high volcanic islands with ancient stone ruins to atolls defined by fishing and navigation. To the north, the Northern Mariana Islands and Guam sit along the Mariana Trench, one of the deepest parts of the ocean. Some islands in this chain are volcanic, with Mount Pagan and other peaks reminding observers of the tectonic forces at work beneath the sea. In the eastern Pacific near the Americas, the Galápagos Islands remain one of the most scientifically significant island groups in the world. Formed by volcanic activity along a hotspot, they host species found nowhere else, from giant tortoises to marine iguanas. North of them lies Cocos Island, part of Costa Rica, a rugged and forested island surrounded by deep waters rich in marine life. Farther north along the Mexican Pacific coast are the Revillagigedo Islands, volcanic and remote, known for their marine biodiversity. Guadalupe Island and other offshore islands add to the eastern Pacific's mosaic. Though closer to continental shores, they are shaped by oceanic processes and currents that tie them to the wider Pacific system. Throughout the Pacific, islands can be categorized broadly as high islands and low islands, yet this simple distinction masks enormous variety. High islands, usually volcanic or continental in origin, tend to have rivers, fertile soils, and greater biodiversity. Low islands, typically coral atolls, are defined by lagoons, reefs, and limited freshwater resources. The interplay between land and sea is constant. Reefs build land even as waves erode it, and storms can reshape coastlines overnight. Culturally, the islands form a network of shared ancestry and divergent histories. Austronesian-speaking peoples spread from island Southeast Asia into the Pacific thousands of years ago, eventually reaching the most remote corners of Polynesia. Their descendants maintain traditions of navigation, dance, tattooing, and oral storytelling that connect islands separated by thousands of kilometers. Colonial histories layered additional identities, languages, and political systems onto this foundation. In the 21st century, Pacific Islands are at the forefront of global discussions about climate change, ocean conservation, and sustainable development. Rising sea levels threaten low-lying atolls, while changing ocean temperatures affect coral reefs and fisheries. At the same time, Pacific Island nations advocate strongly in international forums, emphasizing stewardship of vast exclusive economic zones that encompass millions of square kilometers of ocean. Thus, the islands of the Pacific Ocean form not a scattered collection of isolated dots but an interconnected oceanic continent of water and land. From the volcanic arcs of the northwestern rim to the coral atolls of Micronesia, from the mountainous highlands of Melanesia to the far-flung reaches of Polynesia, each island contributes to a vast and intricate mosaic. Together they shape one of the most extraordinary regions on Earth, where geology, ecology, culture, and history converge across the largest ocean on the planet. Thank you for watching this video.